Today in the show we have DREX and the tokenized real estate market, CFTC's new digital asset standards recommendation, the BIS Agorá project with 7 central banks, and much more. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption and are meant for educational purposes only. In the first drop today, we go back to talk about DREX. DREX is the Brazilian central bank project for their CBDC, their central bank digital currency. It involves a wholesale architecture with the digital real and also tokenized deposits for the use of commercial banks. The Federal Council for Real Estate Agents, in the Portuguese acronym it's COFECE, announced this week that they're introducing a standard for the fees for their official blockchain platform that will be mandatory for all real estate brokers in Brazil. This new system is going to interoperate with DREX and will allow the assets that have been tokenized by the COFECE blockchain to be settled and liquidated against the DREX digital currency. So they'll be able to trade assets and data, and they'll enable programmable money in the real estate sector in Brazil. Through this new system, all the real estate contracts can be issued on blockchain as smart contracts. Since January this year, COFECE has been using blockchain to register the negotiations and the documents in the operations in the sector, and now the platform is 100% live. So with this new implementation, all of these contracts are going to be migrated into the new system as smart contracts, and the transactions that are happening in the network will be completely on-chain, including using tokenized deposits and transaction fees. So it's interesting to see that this is evolving very fast in Brazil as DREX becomes clearer in terms of how it's going to work. The sectors are preparing, the different economies and economy sectors in Brazil are preparing to leverage DREX to the best of their ability. So the goal is to modernize the whole process of dealing with real estate, but also the audit and monitoring process, and prevent frauds and defaults in a sense. This solution being used by COFECE was developed by CF Innovation, which is a company co-founded by a former central bank director, Tony Volpon, according to whom this platform in blockchain enables that everyone that works as a real estate broker or real estate agent can register their transactions and their real estate. So it creates a better monitoring process because the data is all on the blockchain, and everyone, including the IRS, can observe the data when they need to. According to João Teodoro, who's the president of the COFECE system, which is the two associations that handle and govern real estate in Brazil, he highlights that from now on there is a contract model that is applicable to any type of real estate brokerage transaction that is controlled in all of its parameters by blockchain, including the bypass or default that is performed on occasion against the professional services fees. So this is also a benefit for the real estate brokers that currently operate in Brazil. So this is a very interesting use case. I feel that the sectors that will be better prepared for when the Brazilian central bank digital currency is finally operational, like in production, I think they'll have heaps of advantage across other sectors because they'll be able to definitely capture the efficiencies and the corresponding benefits, both for the players in the industry, but also for the users. So as much as we've seen PIX in Brazil with the huge uptake in activity, I think the B2B space will benefit greatly from operating with DREX, both the CBDC and the tokenized deposits that are going to be coming. And I feel that this is one of the sectors that are primed for disruption. So it's really interesting to see this happening really, really close. We haven't really discussed new regulations in quite some time in the show. I don't think I have seen any particular major headline in the last month or so, maybe a few, but nothing really substantial. So that's why this week I was very happy to see that, of all places in the US, there is a new progress, a new step forward in the definition of what could become a clear, organized, transparent digital assets regulation in the US. And it's coming from the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, that voted for a recommendation this week to advance the digital assets taxonomy that will be underpinning a lot more of the regulatory clarity that's coming from the United States. This came from the Global Markets Advisory Committee that's part of the CFTC, and this is a recommendation vote on the comprehensive digital assets taxonomy that was developed by the Digital Assets Markets Subcommittee, which is one of the work groups within the regulator with a lot of participation from both regulators and market representatives. So one example is Caroline Butler, who's the global head of digital assets at BNY Mellon. She said this during the meeting to announce the meeting where the voting took place. She said, and I quote, "A good friend of mine always says words make worlds, and we're hoping that these words will make regulations where appropriate," end quote. Some of the lawmakers in Washington have been working in a variety of bills over the last few years to try and regulate crypto by different angles, different approaches, some more comprehensive than others. But not only that, but also creating this nationwide federal framework for other assets, including stablecoins. So it's interesting to see this coming out of CFTC. According to the panel presentation, they say the following, and I quote, "Consistent language for participants in the digital asset ecosystem to promote innovation, identify and address risk considerations, and enable effective regulatory understanding." That's the role of this taxonomy, end quote. And according to Caroline Pham, who's the CFTC commissioner, she said during the meeting, and I quote, "The quality of the output is again also tremendous, given the socialization and the feedback from not just the members, many of which are global, but also, as I understand it, from international organizations and regulatory counterparts all around the world," end quote. This is what it takes. It takes more than just one country. It takes a global standard. Blockchains are by nature borderless, digital, and global, and therefore a global effort to help everyone gather around a leveled playing field is important. So I'm hoping that this CFTC effort comes together with whatever the UK is doing for financial markets bill, MiCA's doing in Europe, and the efforts in Southeast Asia to enable better framing for stablecoins and other digital assets, such as in the Middle East, same thing in Brazil and the rest of Latin America, because when that takes place, then regulatory arbitrage is no longer a thing. And we have clarity for entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes to operate anywhere in the world by building on top of blockchain infrastructure in ways that everyone can articulate regardless of the jurisdiction. Yes, I know, this is utopian, this is a huge challenge because there's different politics in different countries, but it's still one of the things that will enable what we here in the show call the regulatory integration. So let's start with having clarity. Then we move to where the regulators are participating on-chain for on-chain oversight. And then we move to where the regulators are actually recommending frameworks for smart contracts so everybody knows what they're coming for, what they're using, and there's transparency for everyone to operate in this market. So this week, the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, revealed their new project coming out of their innovation hub called Agorá. This is one of the largest initiatives when it comes to tokenization of cross-border payments. They're leveraging something called the Unified Ledger across 7 central banks. The central banks that are listed are the Bank of France, Bank of Japan, Bank of Korea, Bank of Mexico, the Swiss National Bank, the Bank of England, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is going to include major currencies such as the USD, Euro, Pound, and Yen. And the goal is to bring the public sector, the central banks, and partners in the private sector, i.e. the banks or the regulated firms, and bring in a lot of innovation when it comes to cross-border payments. This is one of the G20 critical aspects for increasing international trade across the member countries, and it's no surprise that they're going to start with countries that have a lot of commerce between themselves. According to the note, while they understand that the tokenization of the real world assets are possible in public blockchains, the BIS doesn't understand that to be a feasible model for the money part or the money counterpart of those transactions. And it will require a model where they can have consensus maintained to retain control over payments, even if smart contracts are involved. According to Hyun Song Shin, who's the BIS head of research, he says, and I quote, "The objective here is to perfect financial intermediation. We know that that's scalable. We know that that works. This is the big leap compared to these other blockchain-based innovation attempts, which are clearly very interesting. But as we wrote about many times in our publications, if you're trying to achieve settlement through decentralized consensus, that is a very difficult challenge to overcome. This is the reason why we believe this is much more promising as a way to solve real-world problems rather than previous attempts." End quote. So here's how I read this, right? The BIS is saying if you want to tokenize other assets, you can do that in public chains because it's easier than it is to do this with money. But when it comes to money, the central banks are still required to govern consensus, to govern finality, to govern exactly and control exactly what is going to happen with the monetary leg of said transaction. So they're going to try and do this on a centralized database. The original focus for this project is functionality, not technology. So they will start with the functionality required by those 7 central banks. And then they will expand this on discussions for scalability, programmability, interoperability, that have not been addressed entirely when they did other blockchain projects. I feel that this is a very much expected stance for the BIS, especially because the Bank of England has already hinted at the digital pound to be a centralized governed solution in terms of this infrastructure, and it will be a retail CBDC. So it's not surprising that this is the path they're going for. I just feel that this is going to be pretty much a B2B space in which banks and the central banks are going to be involved, but no companies and no individuals are going to want to take part because of the centralized nature of this. So we'll see. This is an approach that is not only very characteristic of the BIS and the members that are participating in this project, but let's hope that this is definitely something that they can prove that a cross-border payments, tokenized cross-border payments can be reasonably automated for efficiency using a centralized form of a system, especially when interacting with public chain tokenized assets. In a week packed full of news, here is more. The Brazil Health Department is going to use blockchain to track donated organs. CoinGecko released their new real-world assets report. Transport for Whales is partnering with company JurnyOn to improve travel experiences using AI and blockchain. Crypto exchange Deribit obtained their conditional VASP license in Dubai for them to become a virtual asset services provider. Ripple, the company responsible for XRP, will finally launch their USD stablecoin. Conflux was selected to build China's new blockchain infrastructure. The drinking company Campari is auctioning an NFT in Brazil that will take the winner to a real con experience. Festival Coachella is launching NFTs on Avalanche to tokenize the music experience. Gaming company Trexx announced allowlist for their new Airdrop matchmaking app called Dropper that will connect farmers to whales. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at blockdropspodcast, on Twitter at blockdropspod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the Blockdrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbund Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shoutouts today to the people who shared the links you will find in the episode notes. Amanda Marques, Caio Barbosa, Katie Wheeler, Tivia Prashant, Brian Sanya, Renan Ramos, Zahid Ali, Pat Berisha, Helena Freitas, Gustavo Cunha, Carlos Arena, John Whelan, Cássio Gusson, Marcelo Curi, Dan Stefanis, and Elo Passos. Don't forget to leave your rating on your favorite player. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.